friends, and welcome. Jacob over here. And so in this video I just want to show how you can learn a new technology simply by following a methodology that works for me. I'm not saying this is the best methodology, but perhaps it can help a few people that may find it helpful. And I know that there are people that may have better methodologies, and please feel free to share them. I would love to learn from you as well. So in this video, I'm just going to show you my methodology. And if you feel like there's certain chapters of this video that you'd love to skip to, there are links in the description below that you can just click on to access specific parts of this video to save on time. So without further ado, we are going to get into this video. And for the purposes of the video that I'm doing, I decided to use Express.js as a means of teaching how you can just learn a new technology. So let's get right into it. So what I did is I prepared, in my methodology, I start by creating some helpful questions, questions that just come to my mind. So I have created a few questions and found useful links that will help us learn Express.js. So we can assume that we know nothing about Express.js and we just heard somebody say Express.js. So let's just get to the first question, which is, what is Express.js? So I found this link right here by just searching for this question on Google, what is Express.js? And let's see what we get. Now, I believe that question, the question, what is Express.js, is important because it will help us understand what we're dealing with. So it says, Express.js is a back-end web application framework for building RESTful APIs with Node.js. Now, this definition on its own really satisfies me because now I know that Express.js is actually a backend web technology. And so whenever I'm working with Express.js, it will help me build a backend web application. And now, maybe one thing, so this is what I always do whenever I encounter something that is like difficult for me to understand. Maybe let's say RESTful APIs. I maybe don't understand what RESTful APIs are. What I will do is I will create another question to help me better understand what RESTful APIs are. So I asked another question, which is, what are REST APIs? Okay, let's copy this link and let's try to find out what RESTful APIs are. Okay, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so according to their documentation, they say a RESTful API is an interface that two computer systems use to exchange information securely over the internet. So this is pretty interesting. So what we've just learned right now is a RESTful API allows two systems to interact. So it can be your phone and your backend web application. It can be your computer and your backend web application. It can be your web browser and your backend web application. So a RESTful API allows two systems to interact. So when I'm working with Express.js, I have the ability to create an interface that will allow a browser or a client and my server application to actually work together. I think that's pretty interesting. Okay, so now that I'm at least familiar with what Express.js is, I know it's a backend technology, and then it helps me create a REST API. Okay, so maybe let's try to get to their official documentation, right? So we can just search for Express.js, and there we go. We have their official documentation. Maybe let me just zoom in a bit. Is this okay? Oh, okay. So let's get to the getting started page. So what we see here is the installation process. So they assume you already have Node.js. Oops, I'm getting words wrong. I don't know why. So they assume you already have Node.js. Okay, so I assume you have it as well, But if you do not have it, you can just click this link, download it, and then install it. So they say we need to first create a directory. I'm using Linux, so mkdir is simply a command that creates a directory. Now, I'm obviously not going to use commands because some people might not be familiar with them. And if you do not know what a directory is just another word for a folder. So let's create a new folder and we'll call this my app. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do, they say cd, which means get into this directory. So I already have my text editor open. So with this VS Code window open, I'm just going to grab this and then drop it in VS Code. Okay, and as you can see, yes, I trust this. We have this folder. So, okay, we are moving very well with the documentation. So the next thing they say is you need to use the command npm init to create the package.json file. So if you do not know what the package.json file, what it is, there's no problem. You can simply copy this. Now, I think it's important, whenever you encounter something that you don't understand, guys, you just search for things like this. What is package.json? So it says package.json is, file is the heart of any node project. It records important metadata about a project, which is required before publishing to npm, and also defines function. Okay, okay, there's a lot there, but the catch here is it's the heart of any node project. What that means is it's your package management system. So you know that your program will probably depend on other modules. So your package.json helps you track these files. Okay, so let's try to do this. So we're going to come back here, and then to just open a new terminal, you can just click new terminal, right? In my case, do I have any open right now? Okay, so I just opened the terminal right here. Okay, so let's run the command npm init. Now, it's important to remember that we'll be prompted to just answer a few questions. I'm just going to leave this blank. I'm not going to write anything. Okay, and as you can see, the package.json file is created, which is lovely. So when I come here, you notice we have the name of the application. That's what it meant by metadata. So metadata is simply data about your application, right? So the entry file is index.js. So this is where this is like the entry point of your application. This is the root of your application. So the first file that's going to run is this right here. Now, yeah, we basically answered all these questions, and our entry point is index.js. So now that we know the entry point, we need to create a file because we don't have a file here. So I'm just going to do index.js. So it's blank right now. Okay, so should I bring this up a bit? Okay, let me just clear this. Okay, and I'm just going to collapse it by pressing Control and then the back tick. Okay, and then I just close the panel. So let's get back. So they say now install Express. So we need to install Express, right? So let's do that. Control back tick again, and then I'm simply going to paste and then run this command. So it should take a few seconds to just install the Express package. Okay. Okay, all right, cool. So it's done, and as you can see, we have some node modules because we've just installed a dependency which is Express. So you can see from here, this is a dependency, so our application would depend on this. Okay, that's pretty much it about that. I'm not getting into any scripts. We'll probably do that later. So index.js. Now, so we've just created we just installed some packages, but now we need to look at an example. And most of the documentations that you'll find actually have examples. So in this case, like every program that you do. I remember the first time I learned C++, there was a very simple hello world program where we did this C out, is it the redirect operator? And then you write some string that called hello world. So let's just see how we can create a very basic application. So let's just copy the whole lot of this. Now, it doesn't matter what this is, right? Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to move this down here, and that's it. I was just changing a few lines there. Now, what would be the best thing to do here? Do I just run this, or do we maybe just explore a few more things before running this application? Okay. Let's get back to that documentation. So they're saying this app starts at server and listens on port 3000 for connections. So running it locally. So to run it, we can do node app.js. Okay. So let me bring back the terminal, and then let me clear this. And then let's do node app dot. Sorry. Now in this case, we're not using app, we're using index.js. Run it. So it says example app listening on port 3000. So what does this mean? So they're saying to load it, simply go to HTTP in your local browser. Okay, let's see what happens. Wow, we got an hello world. We got a message saying hello world. Interesting. So just now we created an Express application. Now, sometimes, we create applications like this, we go through the documentation, but we don't really understand what's going on. So let me try to now explain what we have just done. So let's assume we know nothing, right? So let's look at the first line. Okay, so the first line we require. So require is simply saying, telling our application that we need to make use of the Express package that we installed, and then we make a reference to it, which is Express. Then on the second line, we are creating an instance of the Express application. As you can see here, it says creates an Express application. So we understand at this point we've created an Express application. Now, remember, according to the first article that we read on Wikipedia, they said Express is a back-end web technology that helps us create RESTful APIs. Now, a RESTful API allows two systems to interact. That's what we learned. Now, what is this app.get? Now, if you don't know anything about it, you can simply, nope, I wasn't supposed to do that. Okay, I think my mouse is not working fine. Okay, let's copy this, and then let's get back to their official documentation, and then just paste that, and let's see if we get anything. Okay, there's something here. app.get. Okay, so it says app.get routes HTTP GET requests. Interesting. So GET is an HTTP GET request. So it's like a method, right? Because this is like a function. So what are HTTP methods or requests or whatever they are? So, if I'm learning something, I'll just create a question like, what are HTTP methods? So lucky for us, I found another interesting link. Now, you can just search for these things and you find different links, but then just choose one that you can easily relate to. So there's this individual called Thomas. I don't know the surname, but he said something very, very interesting. He said HTTP methods are used to determine what action you want to execute on a specific resource, helping the server to understand the nature of the requests. So what he's saying is, in order for your backend application to know how to respond to a request that came to it, it needs to have an HTTP method that is defined. So he says you have four main kinds of requests. So you have a get request. Now, notice here in our code, we actually, could I like split this to, oh, interesting. Let me just try to collapse this a bit. So he's saying we have get. So get simply retrieves data. I believe this was supposed to be data. Okay. So he's saying get simply retrieves data. So if I want to retrieve data, Express, remember, it helps us create RESTful APIs. And we've just learned right now that HTTP methods are important because they help us help us determine what action to take. So basically, we can receive a request and then give feedback via these HTTP methods. So get is simply used to retrieve data. So in the event that the client wants to retrieve some information from the backend, they can use the get request. Interesting. So in this case, we're actually using get, and this is why we got hello world. So which means, guys, if we came here, and let me just close the server, and before I restart it, we could even let's experiment. What if we said home? Save it, save it, and then let's restart the server, and then let's refresh. It says cannot get. What does this mean? So it means, remember, let's come back here. He said he said HTTP methods are used to determine what action you want to execute on a specific resource. So so it says cannot get / because we do not have such a resource. So if I want to access this resource, I would have to specify from my other system that I want to access home, and voila. I don't know if it's voila or voila. It works. It's hello world. I think we're making some good progress. But then there's another thing here. What is this REQ, RES? I think that's a pretty interesting question. Oh yeah, so before we go, so we have post, these are other requests. We have put, we have delete. So post asks the server to accept a block of data. So basically, if you want to log into your account, you use post. If you want to update something, you use put. If you want to delete something, you use delete. Interesting. Now, I'm obviously not going to start talking about these other HTTP requests, but if you want me to talk about them, you can just put a comment in the comment section below, and then I'll probably make a video on that as well. Then we'll just walk through this. So we've just learned something here. So get is available. This get method is available when you create an instance of the Express. Post is also available, and we can prove that. Yep, it's there. So you can try out the others and they'll be there. Okay, interesting. So now, what are these? Now, if you remember here, they're saying the HTTP requests, they take two things, a path and a callback. So callback is simply a method that will be called, right? Whenever we hit or access this particular resource. Okay, so what are these REQ and what is this RES? As usual, let me just go back to full screen. As usual, I created another question. So what are requests and responses in Node.js or Express.js? Pretty interesting question. So let's copy this link. Did I just do something wrong? Definitely. Copy link. Let's paste this here. Okay, so this article says something. It says request and response object are callback function parameters and are used for Express and Node.js. You can get request query, params, body, headers, and cookies. So what this means is If I wanted to send some information from the client to the backend, right? What I would use is something called request. Very interesting. Now, let me just show you something real quick. So, for example, whenever you are requesting for something, let me show you something here. So what this means is this REQ is a request. So I could pass some information from here and send it to my application. Let me show you how we could do that. So let's come here and let's do maybe say ID. Okay. Now, how do we access this ID? Right. So can I just do this a bit? Okay. So we're saying this home request, we should expect to receive an ID. Let's try to use REQ. So what I would do here is do, okay, const, let's do ID request dot. Now this documentation, or rather this article, says, for example, request provides us with request body, request route. Okay, it doesn't go in detail, but we have params. Okay, that's interesting. So what are parameters? So these are the things that we pass right here. So in fact, even before I try to go all complicated and all that, let's just try to log and do request.params. So let's close this again and let's do Node.js. So let's refresh. It says cannot get home because we need to actually specify something here. So we're going to do that and do 10. It now works. See that? So we just passed in some information from our browser to our backend application using the request. Okay, guys, I just wanted to show you that we can do that. Now, we can obviously, now we've already seen this. RES is response. So we could send a response to our browser. It passed in that ID and you could actually do a lot of things with this, right? So RES is response. So it's basically used to respond or give a response to the user. Now, if I come here, go back to full screen, I could just do I could do res dot send. So it says sends HTTP response. So it can be a buffer object, it can be a string, it can be Boolean, it can be a whole lot of things, guys. So for example, if you notice here, they use some HTML. Okay, some HTML. Let's see how we would actually use that. So if we came here and maybe change this to H1, let's see what will happen, right? H1. Okay. We close our server, run it again, refresh, boom, we change this. Pretty cool, right? So we are giving response to the browser. So they access the home route and they give us an ID of 10, and then we give them an HTML heading 1, right, which says hello world. Pretty powerful. So I believe we are learning a whole lot. Okay, now how is this working? What is this for? Like app.listen. I know, let me just briefly go past this. Let's start with the app.listen. As usual, I went ahead of you and created another question. What is app.listen? Let's open this link here and see what they have to say. Okay, zoom out a bit, Jacob. So it says, in Express.js, there's app.listen convenience method that can be used to get an Express app to start listening for requests on a given port. Wow, this is interesting. So basically, the app.listen can be used to make the Express application listen for requests. So which means when I type in, localhost 3000, I'm sending a request to my backend application. And so what helps this browser actually send a request to my application is this. So now what is this port? So what is a port, eh? What is a port? Yep, again, you guessed right. I created another question. So what is a port? Let's try to find out. So a port is a communications endpoint. Interesting. So check this out. If we came here, now we don't understand that, right? If we came here and said, oh, let's send a request to port 4000. So this is actually a port number. So it says cannot establish a connection at server localhost 4000. Now remember, a port is a communications endpoint. So there's no communication between this browser, in fact, this IP address, and this web application, because they're on two different ports. This is listening to all requests that come through port 3000. This is trying to send a request to port 4000. So what if we change this port? Okay, save this. Let's cancel this. Let's restart it. It's now listening to all requests that come via port 4000. What will happen if we refresh? Ooh, there we go, guys. So what we've learned here is, and this callback is actually used to just help us validate that the pod is running. It's a callback function. So we've learned a whole lot of things here. So the app.listen is simply a very convenient method that helps us listen to ports, and we get to specify the port number, and we get to provide a callback that just helps us identify what's really going on. Well, I think this has been a very interesting class, don't you think so? So I hope you learned a few things. If you have any questions, we'll look at them in the comment section below. But I think we've learned quite a few things from this video. I hope you've learned a few things, and we'll probably have another video if you would love that. Just leave a comment in the comment section below, and we'll create more content like this. So if you watched up until this part, thank you so much. Do just remember to hit that like button, and if you're not part of this channel, just subscribe, and we'll be happy to just create more content. So thank you so much for watching. Stay blessed, and see you next time.